This is Kelly Shaw. I'm one of the members of the Rocky Mountain Sasquatch organization. I'm up here doing a sighting report story. This took place in 1968. I'm in Wheeler Canyon, Utah, and you can see the home that it took place in. It's all boarded up now and stuff, but this is what happened in 1968. It happened at night. This gal was home alone. Her husband worked on the road quite a bit, so she spent a lot of time at home alone, and she was watching a movie, and her 3-year-old little boy was in the back room asleep and stuff. Well, she walked into the kitchen to get herself a drink, and she's coming out of the kitchen going into the dark living room. The only thing that was on was the TV, and she sees right in the picture window in the door, she sees a large ape-like hairy face staring in at her. Well, anyway, she jumps out of the way into the kitchen and can't believe what she saw, and she peeks back out and it's still staring in. So anyway, she freaks out and grabs the phone, and she calls the police. And she called the Eden police and got them on dispatch, and they wouldn't send anybody out because this part of the canyon, it's just off of Ogden Canyon. Back then, I don't know if it still is, but it was Ogden jurisdiction. And she told them that she had a very large prowler. She knew if she called them up and said that there's a monster looking in her window, they probably would think she was crazy and not send anybody. So she did it a very smart way. She called the police and she was telling them it was a prowler. And anyway, they made her call Ogden City. So she calls them and they say, oh yeah, we'll send somebody out. Well, she went in the back room and crawled up next to her little boy and waiting for the police to come. Took about 45 minutes, go figure. But she's laying there back with him, and she can hear the creature moving around the house, and she said that she could hear it touching each one of the windows. And she says it sounds like it was testing the windows, and she was very scared, very freaked out, and she kept thinking it was just going to crash into the house at any time. Well, all the activity finally quit, and like I said, 45 minutes later, a police officer shows up, and this cop happens to be a giant dude. He was like 6'7", and he looked around the house for the prowler and everything, and of course he started pushing her for questions, and she just says it was very tall guy, taller than you, and I couldn't really get any features out of him. It was just very dark, black, whatever. Well, anyway, he did a reenactment. He stood outside of the house and tried looking in the window, and he couldn't. And he come up, he finally come out and said, hey, this thing had to be like 7.5 feet tall, maybe taller, to be able to be looking in at you like that. Well, anyway, they did their report. He checked around, blah, 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 blah. Well, anyway, she got a hold of her husband the next day and told him what was going on, and he kind of made fun of her. And she's like, we're moving. And he's like, no, we don't want to move out. And he was really acting like he didn't believe what was going on. And she got upset and she moved out. She left. And he stayed there another 6 months, although he worked out of town a lot. So he only stayed there when he come into town. Well, anyway, 6 months later, he wakes up one morning about 8 a.m. and the dog's freaking out on the back porch. So he goes out to see what's going on, and he opens up the sliding glass door and steps out on the back porch, and he's face to face about 10 feet away, a large, dark, brown, hairy creature that he estimates was well over 7 feet tall. So guess what? All of a sudden he's a believer and the house goes up for sale. They sold the house. According to her sighting report that I read, she come back here several years later to, reminisce about the house, and she drove past the house, and the new owners had boarded up the window that the creature had looked through, so she thinks the new owners might have had the same encounter. But anyway, the house is now just a boarded up home. It doesn't look like it's being used any longer. You know, go figure if this has happened to a lot of owners. Probably gets to the point where you can't even rent it out anymore. And then I just want to pan around. There's Derek. Say hi, Derek. He's up here on the sighting report day with us. We're gonna do a couple of these today before we do our podcast. But that goes all the way back to Snow Basin and Trappers Loop. There's a lot of forest back there, but there's a lot of reports of a rogue Bigfoot that comes down to the mouth of this canyon and sometimes out into the Ogden Canyon. And I'm not going to tell you about those reports. I'll save those for another day. But this is the one that happened in 1968, and it's one of the first reports I've ever read out of this area, and it's the most intense out of them. I really like that report. I hope you do. We'll talk to you later.